Welcome back, everyone. I hope you guys are doing great. I have been going through and compiling proofs of biblical cosmology, and I was hoping to do a video talking about all of them, and I still plan on doing that in the future. But I wanted to share two of them that just blow my mind because they are very powerful, and it's similar to what we've talked about in the past that our good friend Ben from Taboo Conspiracy has shared in regard to the songs of the humpback whales traveling, 4,000 miles, which is impossible with the globe model because sound waves travel in straight lines. They can bounce off of things here and there, but for the most part, they travel in straight lines and they're not going to be bouncing off of the surface of the water efficiently enough to travel that far because there should be a 495-mile mountain of curvature blocking them at that distance. But there's distances that may not be as impressive as 4,000 miles, but they are well documented because you can fabricate wells communicating and hearing each other. Like, what are you going to do? Put them to a lie detector test and say, hey, did you hear that sound? All they can do is document that they are synchronizing their dives at certain times when they are communicating to verify that they are indeed not diving alone. They're going up and down at the same times. Well, I was showing a video to my Creation Standard class talking about Point Nemo, which is considered a spacecraft graveyard, a good place to hide objects that are flying up above and coming back down into the ocean. And so, as we're watching a video about it, the narrator talks about the loudest sound heard underwater, and they call this sound the bloop. And for years, they thought this belonged to an animal, some sort of massive sea creature. And so it was very mysterious. They recorded the sound. It didn't sound like machinery. It kind of did. I mean, I've actually listened to it. It kind of has a machinery type of sound, but it's hard to really tell what it is. It's a long, drawn out sound. And they say that it traveled 3,000 miles. And when you look at how sounds travel underwater, this is where things get cool because they say that sound waves that encounter an undersea ridge are reflected and scattered by its surface. Complex or rugged topography, such as a seamount or ridge, changes propagation path and can consume acoustic energy. The physical obstruction of a large ridge can create shadow zones, places where you can't hear the sounds. And so these large ridges creating shadow zones is a real phenomenon. And these regions on other sides of the ridge will be places where you cannot hear those sounds. And so, sound waves can be blocked by curvature. That right there is proof of that. And you see the way that the ocean would be if you did an exaggerated elevation chart here. You have to be near the surface, if the surface of the ocean is flat, to send a signal that far. Problem is, if the surface is curved, the sound would have needed to have been emitted at 869.7 miles above the sea floor to be heard at that distance. Meanwhile, the deepest part of the ocean is only about 7 miles, they say. And so you have this great distance right here. If they're this high, they're up beyond the ISS, allegedly. And so 869.7 miles, that would be impossible. That's how high they would need to be in order for that sound to reach, and the ocean isn't that deep. Not enough room there. And so the reason for that, this loud sound traveling that far, is because the surface of the sea floor has already been mapped out by the Geological Society of America. They did this back in 1959 before we were pretending to go to the moon, and you can see their data. Flat surface, elevation changes on the bottom, all across the entire Atlantic and everywhere that they went. And so you can see here, here's things like the mid-Atlantic ridges. Why didn't they curve the top line? Because they know that's not how it works. They were mapping it out as is. They didn't have time to factor in something that doesn't exist. And so that is the loudest, alleged loudest undersea sound. As mysterious as it was, I'm not going to claim it was some sea monster, but they say it was ice breaking off that made the bloop, the great bloop sound. That's just a funny word, the bloop, but that's what they call it. And the bloop destroys the globe. And now we're going to look at a volcano that does the same because this is one of the loudest sounds they say ever produced on land. And in 1883, the reason this caught my attention last year was because they say this volcano, as we're studying the moons, was able to change the color of the moon for an entire year. It gave us a blue moon, they say, because of the ashes. Now, just imagine the ashes of a little tiny volcano, and this is not to scale. The little volcano I've put on here would be way smaller on their globe, and you would barely see it. It would just look like a tiny little fire. And they say that that created this blanket of smoke surrounded the entire world. And that volcano in 1883 was known as Krakatoa. And its explosions, which occurred on the Sunda Strait in Indonesia, was so powerful, they say, and this is sad, killed more than 36,000 people. Almost sounds like the key to the bottomless pit there was opened. It was also one of the loudest sounds in history and was heard up to 3,000 miles away. Amazing how that works on a world that's not curved because, again, sound waves travel outwards in straight lines from their source. They can echo and bounce off of things. That's what echoes are when your sound waves are bouncing off of things. Now, there would have had to have been an extremely high observer to have recorded that sound at 3,000 miles away. They would have needed to have been at an elevation of 970 miles because Krakatoa, its elevation was only 2,667 feet in height. And so the horizon would have been about 63 miles away. And there would have been over 5 million feet of curvature between the volcano and the person hearing the sound. Could not have been heard at 3,000 miles away unless the world is not as we are told. And so these are just some simple proofs of biblical cosmology, things that can be shared and hopefully easily understood by people who are skeptical, because we have shared things in the past like line of sight signals traveling across the entire Atlantic, and the excuse is refraction, and that it's bouncing off of a barrier that they had to invent called the ionosphere. They invented that, and it wasn't called that back then. It was called the heavy side or heave side, however you say the name, barrier. And that barrier had to have been invented to save the globe because he was told, Guglielmo was told that it would be impossible, first of all, to do that. But he did it anyways. And they argued that, curve is going to be in the way. Don't try it. He did it. And he used a 400-foot tall kite flying apparatus to make sure that it was above any obstructions, not curvature, any obstructions that might have been in the ocean, and it worked. They were able to have that signal go there in 1901, and they have since gone way further. Of course, all of their refraction models put the ionosphere thousands of miles up. It would not be this high. It would be much closer, like way closer, like as close as I've put these lines here to scale with as high as they tell us that is. And so one bounce is not likely. It would have had to have been many bounces off of a gas. Bouncing off of a gas. If they can prove that in the lab, I'd like to see radio waves bouncing off of a gas layer. It's ionized, though. It's the ionosphere. It's charged. And so their scale versions are not, or their versions are not to scale, but they have since gone from England to Australia. And again, the refraction experts say that that's what it was, when there's just absolutely no way that many bounces could have happened at 13,940 miles. It's just not possible. And so, powerful proofs. I'm going to try to put together something very detailed that goes over all of the best proofs, going from the lack of curvature, proof of the firmament, and, obvious fakery that they have with their space agencies. I can cover that as well. But for me, it's the proof. If there's proof of one reality, then the other reality is going to require lies and deception. And if you find any lies and deception with the people who are proving it, you need to throw out their evidence because they have been caught lying. If it's real, they wouldn't have to lie. But I wanted to share this to get out more proofs because end time deceptions are here already and they are happening. Revelation is going to unfold whether we like it or not. And I'm excited for it. I know some people are excited for it. It does mean that things are going to change and it's not going to be comfortable for a lot of people, but our Father will provide. Be at peace and know that He is always taking care of His own. That's why people are sealed for protection in Revelation. They are not harmed. It doesn't say pour out your wrath on all of the elect. It says the ones that are sealed, those you cannot hurt. And so be sealed for the Most High and find out what that means. and be revelation ready because we are living in revelation times, I believe, where things are changing rapidly and the lying signs and wonders are going to improve as technology improves. And there's a time where we're not going to be able to tell the difference by looking at something on a TV screen. And I know my good friend Mike Helmick, rest in peace, said that years ago. And I can't believe that we're already almost there. And that was only like 7 or 8 years ago when he said that. And so, anyways, you guys are the best. I love you. The Father loves you. You are beloved creations of the Most High. Don't take that for granted. Spend time with Him. Get to know Him. He is not who this world is telling us. He's far greater. But that's it. We will see you guys next time.